Welcome to the Swass-Cast. 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 A podcast that covers the Swassy side of geek culture. Swass-Cast. 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 And here's your hosts.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another Swass-Cast. I'm your host, John Cimino, with
Keith Gleason.
and we're here in the Matt Cave with our special guest from the Secret Identities podcast.
Keith Gleason. No, I read the wrong cue card. The Matman from Secret Identity. How are you?
And wow, Keith Gleason looking good.
Well, you know,
wait a second.
I'm taking a lot of vitamins.
Today we have a very special episode. Aren't they always special?
They're always like it's like the ABC after school special.
Yeah,
My
they're
mom's
always-
having a baby.
Today we're doing our top 3 comic series based on a toy.
Yes.
Okay. I hope you guys did your homework, because there's nothing but action and toys coming your way. But before we get into that, we got a little promotion, don't we, Keith?
Yeah, we do.
We all
Let's
got a-
start with this book, Courting the King in Yellow, by
Ooh.
Mr. Brian Latendry.
Or Matt, or
Keith Gleason.
Keith Gleason.
I don't know why he says that. All I did was read it and give him some pointers.
You told him to rewrite the whole thing.
No,
You
I
did the
didn't.
script.
I did not.
Yeah.
But anyway, Brian Latendry, if you love Lovecraft or horror stories, this is a bargain for the price. And Matman, where can we get this?
You can get it at drive-thru, thrucomics.com, or go to the Secret Identity podcast website. We have now set up a Buy Our Books page.
Wow.
Awesome, yeah.
And if you hate Bob Kane for what he did to Bill Finger, hate Brian for what he's doing to Keith on that front.
It had nothing to do with this. I tried to stop
Me
them.
either. I don't know where you got that.
Keith, I got it from him. He's telling me, like, yeah, I got to do his book, and he's not even giving me nothing. It's like, did he put you on, like, a
Yeah,
thank you?
like I said that.
Okay. Okay. And we got another book here. Pow! Bam! Sell. By the Guide to Comic Book Marketing. Now, the guy who wrote this knows so much about the industry because he's seen it all. I mean, we're at the bottom of the barrel. Secret Identity, it's a lot higher than Hero Envy. Like, Hero Envy is...
Thank you.
Yeah, Hero Envy is just the molasses.
We
of
see the
industry.
flies landing on the pile of poo.
Absolutely. We're not even the poo. We're the maggots on top of the poo. But anyways, there's nobody that knows the comic industry better than Matt, the Matman Herring, who has made Pow Bam Sell to, why do people need to know how to market comics, Matt?
Because a lot of people know how to create them, but you don't know what to do afterwards.
Oh.
You open up that box and you go, holy crap, my life work right here. Now what do I do? And it's simple things. I do a lot of free things in there where you use Facebook for to help push yourself. Use Twitter, because Twitter is a good tool to use. Use Cafe Press, things like that to get free stuff to help push what you're doing. Use podcasts, use any means you can. Do that. Have a nice setup at your show, a nice little table. Be friendly. Don't smell. Don't scare people. Don't have a gang behind you at the table. You're going to do well.
Now we're out.
We need to know. What are you talking about?
Now we know why we're molasses on the street.
Give him the money. We need it. But this is what you need to do. So check it out. Where, Matt?
DriveThruComics.com, same place, and SecretIdentityPodcast.com.
Absolutely. Check it out.
Now, my book I'm going to talk about is a book about these guys, Hero Envy. It is the trade collection of all the comics that came out. 4 geeks, 1 apartment, 0 lives. This is a true story. True story.
Definitely the 0 lives. Is definitely the...
Not only do you get the was it 4 issues?
The 3
The 3 issue series. Because the first issue came out about 40 times. I have 6 different covers.
Hey, Matman, did you hear our new catchphrase?
No.
Before the Big Bang, there was Hero Envy.
Nice, because that is true.
Yes.
That is absolutely
It is
true.
true.
But you get the series that came out, the miniseries. You get great covers. You get great stuff by Keith and John with some awesome pictures in here. And you get a cover gallery. And where did that pinup page go with our good friend, Mr. J. May? There it is.
Yeah.
Jason May right there.
Yeah, and showing me getting punched out. He
One of
loves
the-
that.
One of the best looking dudes in comics. Chris
John's
Moreno.
still got a grudge against Jay for that picture.
Chris Moreno.
Yeah,
You know what
Chris-
one of his favorite movies is? On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Nice.
I kid you not.
Chris Moreno's a great guy.
Chris is a good guy. Very good guy. Rich Woodall, know that guy. Gary Gretzky, I don't know that guy.
You don't know him?
You don't want
But that looks pretty cool. That looks pretty cool. Stretch bulk. You got an episode guide, which you definitely need for all the episodes
Yeah.
of Hero Envy.
Well worth the money.
Yes, it is.
Well, so yeah, written by Keith, plotted by me and Keith, and all right, get rid of this thing. All right. Okay, so let's get back to why we're here. Why we back now? You hear? I hear you. Okay. The top 3 comic series based on a toy.
Yes.
Now we're going to start at number 3. We'll start with Matt. We'll go with me, go across, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll probably throw some little honorable mentions. You know, let's see if the fans at home can agree, because they usually don't. Okay, Matt. Number 3.
So number 3 for me, and I'm going to have visual aids too, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Visual aid number
Half the
3.
people that watch us is retarded anyways. they retarded to death because they stick around. So
There we go.
visual aids will help.
Captain Action.
Whoa.
Now, Captain Action was a toy that came out right around the time of G.I. Joe in the 1950s, or I believe it might have been the 60s.
Yeah, 60s.
He was a sort of a secret agent kind of guy where you could mix faces, and he had different costumes. Marvel and DC had a deal with them where you could dress him up as Aquaman, Sergeant Fury, Captain America. I believe there was a Spider-Man one.
Yeah, there's Spider-Man. Which is,
DC.
can I go a little more into detail
Go right
about
ahead,
that?
sir.
The Spider-Man. The Spider-Man is probably one of the most valuable Spider-Man pieces of memorabilia out there, and that was the very first Spider-Man toy, like figure toy.
Yep.
Very first Captain America, very first Sergeant Fury.
Aquaman.
Yeah, and those predated Mego
Yes.
figures and stuff. And the funny thing is, the guy that made the idea, I forget his name right now, but the idea for Captain Action is the guy that did Mego. Eventually made
Moved
it
on to bigger and better.
Made it, sold it to Mego, and became the Mego figures. But that's very important.
Yes.
Very important. toy.
Absolutely is. So DC had the first series that came out, about 5 or 6 issues. More recently, from Moonstone.
Yeah.
And they do a great job with it, where it's not, he isn't walking in and changing into every different costume that you
Moonstone,
can get available.
not to be mistaken for that Hulk villain that appeared in issue 273.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm glad they have a different logo on here, because I was thinking the same thing.
No Thunderbolt.
So Captain Action.
Captain Action. I gotta say, I never read Captain Action, but it sounds cool.
Never read Captain Action. Never wanted to read Captain Action, but I love the toy. And they made even Aqualad and all that stuff.
Yep.
I can see. The funny thing is, I can go on and on about that toy. But Alex Ross did a few of those covers.
He
Didn't
did several. No, I'm sorry, that's Mark Sparaccio.
Okay.
Just as good. Good friend of ours, Drew and John X.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. For me, my number 3, I'm going to have to go now. Maybe some of you might have this. If we do, then we can combine them later. Number 3, I'm going to have to go with. I didn't really care about the comic either. It had a few good issues in there, but the toy was great. G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. I love the cartoon. I just couldn't stand how nobody got those. Nobody could shoot each other. That was kind of hard. But I mean, I gotta admit, it was a great cartoon. Loved Snake Eyes. And I was a freak for Sergeant Slaughter, too, because that was during my wrestling days and stuff. But
I was a fan of the G.I. Joe comic.
I always remember the comic being, because I think Herb Trimpe did some of the art and stuff, but what I always remember about the comic is issue number 2 was like a hard thing to find, because that number 1, they mass-produced that thing. And I remember, I gotta admit, being such a big comic fan, when the cartoon was syndicated, and you got that, check out the comic on Marvel Comics. I used to thought that was unbelievable.
There was an ad for a comic book. It was like seeing an ad for Kiss solo albums on TV.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And I was like,
didn't
oh
the
my
comic
God.
outlast the animated series?
Yeah.
because the comic kept going. It's back now.
And then it went to Special Forces. It went into spin-offs and stuff.
But remember, one of the huge things too was they showed Snake Eyes' face in the comic.
Yeah,
huge.
And they were written by Larry Hama, right?
Yes.
Because he was the guy who originally had he wrote all those little tech spec stuff in the back of the G.I. Joes and all that stuff, and it was cool to have him. Couldn't stand his Wolverine stuff, but I liked his G.I. Joe.
Yeah, his G.I. Joe stuff was his best.
And if you want to listen to an awesome interview,
go ahead, plug
with
it.
Larry Hama, check out the back issues of Secret Identity. Brian sat down with him, who was a huge G.I. Joe fan.
But he never really thought he.
It was a little tough to watch.
Really? Wow.
And it was very tough to listen, because as fired up as Brian is, and a lot of guys are, I can't believe that you're the guy who created Snake Eyes. It was just a job, kid.
It was no big deal.
No big deal, kid. It was just a job.
Like a Mike
Next.
Golden. Mike Golden.
Yeah,
who we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, we know a lot about that guy now. We have an interview with Mike Golden that'll never see the light of day. scrapped.
Okay.
Okay.
My number 3, I'm gonna go with Rom the Space Knight.
Oh, good stuff. Sal Buscema
Yeah.
did the art on that
Yeah.
one. When I signed it, he goes, "Kid, I had a whole career.
I had the
Why
toy.
this one?"
Worst toy ever. Worst toy
Why?
ever.
He could go like this.
You could go, yeah.
And he had his
And he light
his
up
little,
eyes.
little
And it had a
translator
commercial,
deal.
right? There was a commercial for that
Yeah.
toy.
Yeah. And if I can find it, I'll put it on at the end.
I thought that commercial was unbelievable because I first saw Rom in the comic when they were advertising in that, and then when I saw the commercial, I was like, "Oh my god!" And once again, it was just about a comic book for me. It was
But
like,
the other weird thing is like when they mixed them into the Marvel universe too. You never really saw that with licensed toys.
Hulk 293.
Didn't Hulk fight him?
beat the shit.
And now they re-released the Space Knight series, which was kind of
Yeah, and they made a
pre-ROM.
mention to him,
Yeah,
right?
good stuff.
But they couldn't show him, right? Because they don't
Something
have the
like that,
license
yeah.
anymore.
Rick Jones became a buddy of Rom for a little while.
He was hanging out with anybody that walked by.
And I wanted
Cap's not hanging out with me anymore, Wom. Can I hang out with you?
Womp womp. Okay, number 2.
Number 2 for me was an interesting one because this is one that not a lot of people remember
Love
as a toy line. Superpowers.
Absolutely.
I got this one. We had a track meet. It was a state championship, and we were driving down, and we had to stop at 7-Eleven because the bus driver needed gas. So I'm walking in. I'm like, holy cow, what is this? Jack Kirby did this? Got the comic, and then later on went and got the figure. So I was a high school kid. I think I was a junior. And I remember getting on the bus, and this showed you how much I didn't care what other people thought. I was confident enough in my own abilities. You know, I was a jock. I was a little rock star boy. I was going to buy my comics and I was going to read them in front of anybody. Did not care. I'm laying on the field waiting, missing my call for events.
Yeah, no,
because I'm like,
nowadays you'd be
oh
a
my gosh,
superstar.
look at that. This is Lex Luthor. It's crazy. But a crazy toy line. There were 3 series that came out of this. This was the one where like the 3rd series came out and all of a sudden all these crazy, not variant figures, but really low print runs of Mr. Miracle.
Yep.
There was
Cyborg.
a Plastic Man. There was Cyborg. All these figures that came out. I remember seeing it. Toys
Shazam,
R Us going.
Captain Marvel one.
Toys
was
R Us
awesome.
going. You know what? Next week I'm coming back. Never saw him again.
The funny thing is, I remember the superpower figures like in an Osco, and I bought Batman was my first one when you press his legs together because I thought he looked awesome. And then I remember being, I'll always regret this, but I wasn't really I was so young that I didn't really know a lot of the characters, but I saw Calabac.
Yep.
And I remember there was Captain Marvel, and then there was Calabac, and I was like, Calabac kind of looks like the Hulk. And I had to get, so I picked that. And now that Captain Marvel figure is worth a lot of money.
is.
That's a
The
beautiful
whole second
run.
line.
So now was Justice League still going, and then this was an offshoot of that?
It was.
Yes,
It was starting to wane. This was right about the time of Crisis.
Okay.
So everything in the DC universe was starting to change a lot.
Gotcha.
And I remember buying
So
2
they kind of
flashes.
focused this for kids.
Yeah.
Yes, and they made it called Super Friends, the Legendary Superpowers.
Legendary superpowers. But I bought 2 flashes and I painted one reverse flash colors. And then couldn't do the logo. I remember trying to do around the logo. I said, forget it, this one doesn't have a logo.
You might have been the first
customizer.
Customizer.
And I did it with model paint, and the paint never dried right, so you couldn't touch it. You can only look at it. That's reverse flash. Just look at it. Don't touch it.
But we're gonna go back to your little story about at the time you said you were like sitting down and you didn't care that who saw because of the toys and the comics. Remember that when we go to my number 1 because you would have been upset with me because I did care. I did care. Okay, but my number 2 I'm gonna have to go with. Once again, I love the toys much better than the comics, and Herb Trimpe drew it again, Shogun Warriors.
Oh, yeah.
My problem with the toys, the comics was they didn't really have Grandizer on it, and I was a huge Grandizer. I'd watch Force 5.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to the Shogun Warriors. And then I saw the toys, and I couldn't find Grandizer because it was only released in Europe, and I could always find the transvestite Raydeen, and then or Godzilla, and I wanted Dragon or Grandizer.
Great Mazinga.
Right, yeah, I could see, but Great Mazinga wasn't always there. But I remember the bot bag. There was 100 bot bags. Transvestite, once again, Raydeen, and Godzilla, and it was like, where is this Grandizer? Because it was always on Wednesdays, and I wanted Grandizer. And then I saw the comic books, and I was kind of like, okay, Trimpy, you were great in the Hulk, and I love you to death for the Hulk, but just G.I. Joe, it just... Poor Trimpy. They threw him on those, but you know what, Trimpy, I love you. Had good for the fists, like when they showed, but I didn't really care about the comic, but I loved Shogun Warriors once again. It was better than the toys were so much better than the comic.
Yeah, those toys were
and
so
the cartoon too.
Because the only bad part is that they were like $14 or $15 at the time because they were 2 feet tall.
They were Jack Kirby robots.
And, you would shoot the fists, because I remember having a bunch of friends that had them, and none of them had the hands because they shot them and they lost them.
They would always, because you're shooting those things off bridges and stuff.
So, and then the Godzilla one had the tongue.
Yeah. I got a quick story from my friend, a friend of mine that got the Godzilla for Christmas. And the Godzilla had that little tongue that went out. It was supposed to be the fire. And he was so captivated by that. On Christmas morning, he ends up breaking the helmet off and the head off and ripping it out because he just needed to know how it worked and what that stupid thing was. On Christmas morning, he got it and he broke it that day. You know what I think that's awesome. That's awesome.
That's a great story. But think about modern medicine wouldn't be that if we didn't if people back then didn't take dudes' heads, rip them apart, and see how the tongue worked and all that.
Absolutely. But here's my 1 and 2. It's funny. It's like I love the toy and I love the cartoon better than the comic. Yeah. So go ahead. This is number 2.
I actually like the comic better than the toy. It was Visionaries. It didn't last very long. It's they were knights and they had those big staffs with
that's right.
With the
holographics,
and they could
trying to forget that one.
They could make the animal. I don't know why, but I like the idea of it in the comic. The toys, I thought.
I only knew them. They had a cartoon too.
Yeah, they did.
But
none of it lasted long.
I only had the cartoon. I mean, I only had the toy, and the only toy one I had was the ape. The guy who was the ape because he was the strong guy, and he was like an ape, a brute, the Hulk, the thing.
Like the Hulk. There we go.
Yeah. And
it always goes back to the Hulk. But I like the comic. I read it for a little while, and then
was the comic made by Star Comics? Star Comics. I already went. See,
home of married children.
Visionaries kind of went through the same.
I'm sorry.
Visionaries went through the same vein as like Inhumanoids.
Yeah,
there was this. The toy, I remember even getting the big Munglor. I forget what the name it was, and I bought the thing and I got it for Christmas, and I was like, "What the hell does this thing do?"
Yeah.
At least Shogun Warriors shot stuff, and it didn't. I was like, "Oh," but Inhumanoids was like Visionaries for me. Like I remember there was a comic too, right?
Yeah.
And Mad Balls. It always fit in that same. It always fit in the same.
Mad Balls.
I always loved Mad Balls, and I got that 5-issue limited series. Just really quick. And those were worth a little bit of money. I remember I missed issue 1, and I got the 1 through 4, I think it was. 2 through 4. And I looked, I finally found it was $5 for issue number 1, because Mad Balls were big. And I remember one time my mother had a friend.
They come back, too.
Yeah, they did. And they made, the football size. Yep. But a little quick, one more thing about Mad Balls was, I remember I was at my parents' house in the Cape, and they invited these people over. And I remember, going outside with friends and all stuff, and there was a little kid there, and he was upstairs playing with our stuff. Whatever. I was a little, I didn't like that, but, I wasn't going to say. After he left and all that, I went back up and I see my Mad Ball. And I know the one with the Cyclops one. Yeah. It had a little horn. It was chewed off because that little bastard. Shoot, I was so mad. I was crying. I was like, ah! And then I forgot about it, but I hated that little kid. But I'll never forget Mad Balls. It was up. He was a tough guy. The Cyclops one was a tough guy on Mad Balls. I hate that.
I remember going into Caldors and seeing them all over the toy aisle floor because they were loose.
Yeah,
they were loose. Kid would just dump them on the ground and kick them.
I think one was called Slobulus. I remember
what was the baseball one? Screwball?
Yeah, Screwball. Yeah, they were. Okay, so
number 1 for me, did not play with the toys very much because I was more into the Star Wars figures, and you couldn't. My money had to go to Star Wars figures. I needed more Stormtroopers. I didn't need Micronauts. Micronauts, the comic. Michael Golden did the art on this. You had Bill Mantlo did the writing.
Mantlo, yeah.
And he just did a great job of
Did that before the Hulk.
This series is probably one of my favorite comic series of all time. If I could take 5 series with me of all my comics I have, that's definitely one that's going with it. It was an amazing story. The art of Michael Golden at this time, too, was mind-blowing. You're reading this going, this is so adult.
Cockrum did the cover, right?
Dave Cockrum did this. He signed this one months before he passed away. I hope it didn't have anything to do with it. And then Jim Shooter Jim Shooter, when I sat and chatted with him, I spoke about the fact that you took a chance and brought this book. You brought it. You brought it. So, Micronauts, greatest comic series.
What was the name of the guy
That lasted a long time.
It did.
It did.
And it's still going. They keep trying to bring it back.
Yeah.
It's now in, there's a Marvel series going on now. It's like Venom and who's the other guy? Carnage, because I don't read any Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, it's this.
They're now in the Microverse.
Right.
So they told Carnage or Venom, who's the bad guy now?
Carnage.
They told Carnage, if you do something, we'll send you to the Microverse where you can kill people all day. You can just keep killing worlds. He's like, I'm in. So now he's in the micro world.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, what I was going to say is, what is the name of the character that he almost looked like Colossus? He had a red... He had a Croyer. I liked him because, once again, let's go back to the Hulk. He was the brute. He looked, when I saw him as a kid, I was like, well, that looks like a Hulk Micronaut.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was his name?
Croyer.
Croyer, yeah.
And he had a brother. And, I mean, they just, again, they took some great toys. Like, each character was based on one of the toys. But you have, like, Space Glider, and now he's Arcturus Rand in this book. And just great stuff. Great science fiction.
Yeah, I knew about the toys, but then I didn't get into the comics till years later. I mean, I knew about the comics.
Yeah.
I never really read them and all that because, I wasn't too into it. But I knew the toys before, much before then. I knew the comic book in that one.
Yeah.
All right, my number one. Okay, once again, we're gonna go back to like when you didn't care. Okay, first off, when you were like young and reading the comics, because I'm gonna tell a little story. I never told you this, but my number one toy based on a comic book or vice versa, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Now, first off, I'm going to say the mini books that were those were fantastic. Now, I know DC did the one-shot first, and Marvel Comics Presents when Superman beat He-Man, and I cried when I read that issue. I was so mad. They couldn't end in a draw. No, he had to lose, and I was so mad. Okay, but then and then DC made a 3-issue limited series, and then that's basically it. And then Marvel took over with Star Comics later, and then now I know they're doing with the new stuff I can never really get into. But first off, I want to say that that He-Man cartoon is probably my second greatest cartoon ever. The toys were unbelievable, and the comics were good. Those little comics when He-Man was first like a caveman, and then he got that suit that made him so. I mean, and the art was fantastic. It was the guy who inked the Hulk, Elisa. I can't remember the name. I'm sure all the He-Man fans know, but like it was, and that's how I related to the comics because I knew he was an inker on the Hulk for
a while. Riggs?
No, Alice something. And I don't know. Oh, no, Ernie Chan.
Oh, loved Ernie Chan.
Yeah, yes. He did like, and I just looked at that and I was like, I noticed like the similarities from the Hulk comics, but like. Those comics were awesome. But now a little quick story about to do with He-Man. I never told you this, but I'll never forget this. It's when the second series came out and I was in a CVS and I'm looking at the He-Man figures and Buzz Off, and I was like, oh my god, Buzz Off. And so it was $4.99 or $3.99 because I remember I had $5 bill and I was in line with Buzz Off. I'll never forget. I look over and there's a girl that I went to school with. Now, I'm young, but, like, it's 84, so I'm probably, like, 11, 10. And still, it's like, I'm so embarrassed, right? And she looks at me and she goes, what are you getting that for? And I was like, I cannot lie. It's for my friend. It's his birthday party. And she looks at me. She's like, yeah, right. I was so embarrassed. I could not. And I couldn't even look at her. She gets her thing and she goes. And it was a horrible. I must have blacked out because I don't remember the next school days. But I try to play it off like it was somebody else's. But I wanted that Buzz Off so bad. I was so obsessed with He-Man. I had I had Eternia. I had every He-Man thing, and just somewhere along the line, it wasn't cool because girls were more mature than boys. And I think I was still in, I think maybe 4th grade at the time.
She was buying her, strawberry flavored lip gloss?
Oh, I don't know, but I was so embarrassed.
And her leg warmers?
I looked so red. It was seriously, I looked like Keith Gleason in the morning looking at himself butt naked, like all wide open like this. I was so embarrassed, and I was like, how can I live with myself? All right, that was my number one, He-Man.
My number one is going to be Transformers from Marvel.
Yep.
For a couple of reasons. I thought the comic was actually really good. And it's actually the second comic I ever bought.
Didn't Spider-Man appear in an episode, in an issue?
He probably did. He had to.
Yeah, the black
and, the first comic I ever bought was the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones from Marvel, but the second comic was Transformers, and I remember it's number 17 with the Jetfire coming in, and
all your comics always came from movies or something. That's how you
did. My first real superhero comic was Spider-Man, and then Moon Knight.
yeah.
So it was like, I remember I did like it. Looking back on them now, you can see where, just like any toy line, they used to force them to have the, whatever. The
everything would have to fit in. The equipment would be, and you knew it was coming. You're like, you turn the page. Oh, you're now a Bumblebee car. Well, yeah, because it's in the store now.
I remember the huge thing. I remember when it came out was like when they did G.I. Joe versus Transformers, and I was like, whoa, I have to read that.
More plastic than I can deal with.
Yeah, and remember the first issue cover was G.I. Joe destroying Bumblebee?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, my God.
Well, see, the thing is, the reason why I when I saw that, I thought it was cool, but I wasn't so into the Transformers. I had Grimlock and I had Megatron, but I wasn't so crazy about the toys. Same with G.I. Joe. I had the cooler guys, like Snake Eyes and stuff, Bazooka Zap, and Grunt. But the funny thing we were saying about that is, like, those comics though did have some great movies. Like the Transformers movie is the best out of, for me, the best out of those. Like, because G.I. Joe the movie was a little letdown.
The Transformers one was one of the best movies.
And the He-Man movie with
when I first saw that in the theater, I'm like, it was because it was almost like a great war movie.
Yeah,
with just big robots.
Out of all the cartoons,
I love the G.I. Joe movie. I know he.
No. I didn't hate it, but I just didn't think it was as good as the Transformer movie. I mean, come on. My problem was that they didn't showcase Snake Eyes that much. They showcased Sergeant Slaughter. Yeah. This one's for Jack. And then, like, he's giving the elbow smashes. I love that. But I thought that the Transformers. See, the funny thing is, I was going to say is, like, of all the cartoons I have, I don't have anything Transformers except the movie, which I loved. And I don't even have anything of G.I. Joe, and I have all the He-Mans, obviously. Yeah. But, like, that movie was so good. And who was the big robot in Transformers? Who was the big thing?
Mega Supreme?
Yeah,
was
Megatron? I was a little too old for those.
The planet?
Yeah, the planet. Optimus Prime or something?
No, it was like something Kron. Omnicron.
Okay, but Unicron.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing I loved about that is, do you remember remember when he screamed? It was the stock footage for the Incredible Hulk from the 82 series. Wow! And when I saw that, I was like, I'm watching this whole movie forever. I'm watching this movie to the. It was the stock of the 1982 Hulk animated series. It was so they used that in 3 cartoons. In the Transformers, they used that in the Incredible Hulk one, and they used that in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when the Juggernaut was, when he would fight Spider, he'd be like, "Wah!" So that's it. Any honorable mentions?
Not that I can really think of right now.
I'm not GoBots. I mean, I hated people. I know that was the white trash of the Transformers. It was like, the poor people. It was like the shelters of the Transformers. But I always loved Crusher. And the reason why I say this, Crusher was the girl. But I try to play off to people. I remember having Crusher. For some reason, I loved Crusher. I didn't like Psykill. I didn't like the Rock Lords or any of those other things. I liked Psykill, but she was a girl, and I used to always tell my friends, no, she's not a girl, it's a guy. And they were like, no, you like the girl. And I was like, no, I knew she was really a girl, but I loved Psykill, and I didn't want to admit it.
You know what?
I'm such a bastard.
I do have an honorable mention. Our good friend Eric Hayes did a comic. He wrote the story for the Outer Spacemen. It was a toy that came out in the 1960s. It was a very low-budgety toy. I remember going to, we had a store, Railroad Salvage, which was a junk store.
That sounds awesome.
It was.
That was so chock full of good stuff.
And there was a guy, the guy who used to have the store, the owner, Ruby Vine, and his wife, Choo Choo. Hi, Ruby Vine for Railroad Salvage. Just bought a truckload of couches. Here they are right here. Come on down, $5 each. Got to get rid of them. That was what he would do. And you wouldn't want to be caught dead in that store. Right. But when you go in there, they had all that stuff, and they were like $1 each. So I remember grabbing them.
It's the modern day Big Lots.
It was. But with a stigma.
Stuff was great.
But with a stigma. You did not get caught in Railroad Salvage stores. So I remember buying the figures just because when I was playing Star Wars, I needed Cantina more. I need more Cantina guys. Yeah. So I was buying all the monsters. These figures ended up being worth a ton of money. A good friend of ours, Eric Hayes, about 4 or 5 years ago, wrote the comic adaptation of the Outer Spacemen. Did it as a great story.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. If you go to New York Comic Con, there is a booth there that had the Outer Spacemen toys there for sale. The replicas, because they're redoing them. But great stuff. Cool looking.
Wow. Look at that. Any honorable mentions, Keith?
No, I mean, G.I. Joe would be one, I guess, and that's about it. I didn't really...
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get the actual toy that became, because I was more the comics,
Yep.
and then I filtered into
Right.
the other stuff. But, like, that was always... You got to admit, those G.I. Joes, that was a good time. And, like, they were just mass-producing all those, like,
Right.
Transformers, G.I. Joe, to He-Man. It was like, buy these toys. Here's the
Right,
comic.
yeah.
Yep.
Here's the thing. And we sucked them up. we sucked
Yeah.
them up. So, hey, tell us your favorite comic that was based on a toy, or a toy that was based on a comic. We'd love to hear. Maybe the stuff we said you agree with. I'm sure some of them. Or maybe the stuff you hate. And as always, send us your mail. And we love your hate mail. So give me a how good.
So good!
Bye-bye.